Dating back to the Great Depression and the New Deal, the Federal Housing Authority used racially restrictive practices to eliminate non-white ownership of homes. They did this through a practice called redlining. And redlining, as defined by Jesus Hernandez, a professor at UC Davis, is the institutionally racist practice of the Federal Housing Authority to restrict non-white ownership of homes and prevent them from obtaining home loans. The effects of this are still evident today. I have a little introduction here, if you want to pause your screen and read that, that tells you about the introduction of redlining. Now, I personally am a sociology major. I graduate in May. I have taken numerous courses on race and ethnicity and often the economic and social impacts linked to these race and ethnicity. One of these is redlining. Today I'm going to first talk to you about the detrimental effects of redlining before finally talking about how organizations have been put in place, one organization in particular, to help fight redlining. Before finally talking to you about how redlining will benefit and how redlining elimination will help improve the lives of African Americans in our society. Now my second slide is the effects, if you would like to pause and read that. The effects of redlining are quite simple. It dates back to the Great Depression because we needed to bail the banks out during the Great Depression. They couldn't give out home loans anymore, they didn't have any money. So what they did, starting in the 40s, well starting in the late 30s, progressing into the 40s, was they restricted black communities from getting home loans. They did this by circling a neighborhood and calling it a high-risk investment, which basically eliminated the chance of them getting a home loan. It's interesting because from 1940 to 1950, black income statistically tripled, even though by 1950 African Americans lived in what was called the worst homes in America, the lowest quality, the lowest home values. And Elizabeth McClure, a professor at UNC Chapel Hill, even found that redlining has been linked to poor health in residents, all because of where they live and they can't get out. Now, the most famous example of a red line would be Detroit's 8 Mile Road. For those of you who don't know what 8 Mile Road is, in Detroit, the Federal Housing Authority wanted to build a new development, but they couldn't build one next to a black community because it was considered a high-risk investment. And you couldn't build next to that because you couldn't get a loan in order to build from this. So what they did was built a wall, an 8-mile-long, 6-foot-tall wall to separate the white community from the black community. One side was a high-risk investment, the other side was not. So you were stuck here, even though right across the street it was different. The banks used this practice institutionally to keep blacks down during this time. Now, even though it was officially made illegal in 1968, Elizabeth McClure and some of her researchers have found that there are policy-level practices that still show that even in 2020, redlining is still taking place. That's why even in 2020 we see high levels of demographic segregation in the United States, continuing almost 100 years later from when it first started. Here's my second slide if you'd like to pause that. Now, it's cool because there are actually policies and organizations put in place to fight this exact problem. The most famous being the National Fair Housing Alliance, which is based in Washington, D.C. on Pennsylvania Avenue. They are the only national organization that fights solely for housing equality in America. They achieve this through education, through public policy change, community level development, and advocacy. Now, it's important because you can actually benefit from this. You can contact them and get in works with them, and you can donate to them to help eliminate redlining. But the first organization to fight redlining was actually in 1974. They were called the Adams Morgan Organization. They helped bail redlining out by giving grants to families to help afford their home. They used fundraising, grants, and even some of the tenant savings to help pay for these home loans and help pay off homes because credit scores were so low in these black neighborhoods they could not afford these necessities to get out of there. So it's interesting because back to 1974, organizations were fighting for this exact problem. And even in 2020, the National Fair Housing Alliance is still fighting for this problem. The need to end redlining is there. And the National Fair Housing Alliance in Washington, D.C. is there to fight for this problem and help alleviate it. There's one of my final slides. Lastly, I'm going to talk to you about the benefits of ending redlining. And the benefits are quite simple. I want you to picture with me for a minute here a society where foreclosures have dropped, credit scores have been raised, home values have been raised across the board. We have racially diverse communities. That can all happen if we eliminate redlining. If we eliminate redlining, home values will increase, credit scores will increase, diversity will increase. People will be rewarded for their merit, not the color of their skin. That's a society I want to live in, and I hope that's also a society you want to live in. Because if you picture it, it'll happen. Because it's been statistically proven that redlining has been linked to poor health and satisfaction in residents. And it's also been linked to high levels of foreclosure. So if we eliminate redlining, we will live in a society where foreclosures are down. We will live in communities that are more diverse. No longer will we see segregation. It's 2020. We should not be segregated anymore. If we eliminate redlining, this can all happen. Now, here's my final and conclusion slide. In conclusion, it's up to us to eliminate redlining. Angela Davis, a political activist, said it is not enough to be non-racist. In a racist world, you must be anti-racist. And that's what I'm calling on you to be, is anti-racist in order to eliminate redlining. We can no longer just be non-racist. We have to be anti-racist and fight anyone who is racist in order to eliminate redlining. We also must fund and help organizations such as the National Fair Housing Alliance, organizations that are put in place to end redlining. It is up to us to do that. We must be anti-racist, and we must fund organizations that help this. You can go to the National Fair Housing Alliance website and donate or get in contact with them, and they can help you. Now, as you can see, redlining has been going on for nearly a century. It has been linked to poor health, high foreclosure, but there are organizations put in place to help us, such as the National Fair Housing Alliance. And we have statistics to prove that redlining, if we end it, it'll benefit the lives of everyone. Therefore, it is up to all of us to end redlining. It will benefit the world around us, not just black people, white people in general. And if we want an inclusive society, this is what we need. I hope you understand what I'm saying.